roadmap and what that means for the business and how to manage all of that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I can see nodding around the room. So thank you for that. Melanie, what about you?
So I think slightly at odds with what Deanne said is that, yes, there is, I think, the understanding of the value and the need and the benefit of business change, but where your second bullet comes in about the volume being so high and the pace that's needed to deal with all the transformation elements, that actually what that does is, and I can't remember if it was Lenny or Dean who said it a minute ago, but that erodes then, because of that shortcut and that pace, the people element almost then take a back seat because that change has to land, it has to be embedded, but it's almost the structure that's embedded rather than the people being transitioned and brought along.
Yes, the structure, not the people. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And Alistair?
Yeah, following that last comment, Melanie, I think that I like the saturation term. I've been using that quite a lot, and I think it's that historically I would have had time to dry out. I'm used to, my understanding might be strong, but it's based on that traditional, here's a big program, I get time to recover before I go again. Actually, you wouldn't ask an average person to run 2 marathons in 2 days, but that's akin to what's being asked with that combination of volume and pace. And there isn't time to recover. Even if we increase the capacity, you can only absorb so much in any one go.
Mel, can I just jump in on that? Because I just think that's really pertinent, because I think that point that you say, Alistair, that you get time to kind of dry out and recover, actually not only that, but then I think you can actually reflect to the business the success, the value, the benefit to them as individuals, as the kind of new way of working. But you never get to capitalise on that and embed that and show that really added the value, because you're then on to that next thing. So that I don't think they ever really, they being the business, really can tangibly say, yeah, that was worth all the pain and effort, because I now feel there's a positive change, that we've experienced.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Well, I mean, we are here to discuss, but I'm going to move us on because there are so many other points that we need to make. So keep putting your thoughts in the chat, please. So having talked about biggest challenges, one of the things I wanted to talk about was some of the survey results that are coming up. And I think it hits some of the comments that are being made. When it comes to the top sort of results, apparently we're sharing the success of the change by saying we're delivering the value set out in the business case. And we're saying that people adopt new ways of working. But actually, I think that's a good thing. That's what's being claimed in the annual global survey. But what caught my attention was that a lower number is the organisation is more productive or successful, and customer and staff satisfaction. And I think those two are effectively, the customer and staff satisfaction is a people metric. And I would like to see that much higher, that staff feel empowered. Staff feel that the changes have simplified their working lives. Staff feel that the changes have enabled them to add more value. Staff feel that they were treated with respect during the change process. And the reason I'm concerned about we've met the value set out in the business case, rather than the organisation is more productive or successful, is that, again, that's more of a tick box exercise. We're saying, actually, we've shifted the organisation to a more positive piece. I think would have been far more helpful. So that's certainly one of my observations from the global survey. Something else that I wanted to share with you, and you can get all of this in terms of the survey reports from last year, but also taking part in the survey this year. There's some horrifying stats that I'm now about to share with you. First of all, we're pretty much lower than 50% in the replies that I'm about to show you. So going back to that portfolio management piece, no, we are not really looking for the interdependencies, duplications and omissions. And this is not a criticism of us in change. What I mean by we are not doing it is that data actually isn't being tracked by the business. So what we've got too often is we've got directors who are commissioning change in their own areas and there is no connect the dots. So there's no recognition that perhaps something might fly in the face of something that somebody else is doing, or perhaps duplicates that effort. So I think, again, there's the evidence that portfolio management, which we need so much to be able to communicate that cohesive picture, just isn't there. And we're not measuring the benefits achieved from the change. So we've got a tick box exercise that's going on there, which is about, well, we've done the benefits. We've done the benefits in the business case. There we go. You know, but yeah, but we're not, and you're going to see the argument I'm about to make, which is much more about the experience of change. And perhaps we're not sort of measuring whether or not that's been a positive experience, and that we've got benefits out of the change activities that we undertook. Again, I mentioned already the cumulative workload of multiple changes. No, we're not tracking that. And I think the horrifying one here is that our level of change is manageable. 4 in 10, and I've actually seen that go down on some of the surveys in the UK to 26%. Similarly, 23% in more recent surveys, people have time to adopt new ways of working. I'm going to quote some other survey results to you now that will give you that feeling that if in your own organisation the volume of change is horrifying you, the bad news is I think it's going to get worse. I don't think we've never been doing as much change as we're doing now. But it's also at this moment in time, it's never been slow. It will never be as slow again, because next week it will get even faster. And here is a few reasons why I think that is the case. IBM have done, these are all CEO surveys from around the world. And the IBM survey that came out earlier this year, 43% of CEOs say that they will increase the tempo of their organisation's transformation in this year alone, compared to just 19% who think it might slow down. So we already know that we're at an incredibly high volume of change, and that piece is coming at us. And then there's the Gartner one, which I've quoted a few times recently because it's so simple, but it really sticks in the brain. They accidentally asked a question in 2016 on another survey about how many enterprise-wide changes, or a quick way of saying that would be transformation, that your average employee is exposed to, and the answer was 2. And then at the end of last year, they asked the same question. The answer is 10. So there's a 5-fold increase. I think one of the things that caught my attention, not just the 5-fold increase, but the fact is we're talking about enterprise-wide levels of change. And that means programs, transformation programs, which means for the average employee, multiple changes. I'm working for a big beauty company, and I know that in developing their new warehouse, their new procedures, we've got all sorts of changes happening to your average forklift truck driver who's getting changes coming at them in every direction, not only on shift patterns, team organisation structures, but also how many hours they can work, new time sheeting that they're getting on a phone. You know, it doesn't change the fact that you turn the key and you start driving or reversing your forklift truck and how much weight you can have on the forklift. But there's a huge number of change coming at them. You know, and just something as simple as that brings to life for me the Gartner statistics. So why did I say I think it's going to get worse? Because there's some other surveys I've been running and which absolutely align with my own experiences in the boardroom. There was a part of the IBM survey said this, that 35% of CEOs felt that their workforces are going to need retraining and reskilling in the next 3 years as a result of AI. So that's 35%, a third of CEOs believe that, and that is up from 6% the previous year, 29% jump. PwC, they've done their global survey, but I'll just quote the European part of it. 66% of the European CEOs think that their workforce need to be upskilled because of generative AI. Now, the reason that caught my attention, and it goes back to Lenny's point from earlier on around people change and Dean's point, is that when we talk about that upskilling, what we really mean is that it's massive. It's a significant emotional, behavioral, and values change. Because it might well be that instead of, in my role, I am inputting data, checking the accuracy of data, being measured for how quickly and accurately I input information, running reports on that information. Actually, a lot of that's already being done. And now my role is to have insights about the data that I can see in front of me. Or in one of my clients who've moved to an HR platform, the people that they're in their finance function have actually got to instead think, well, all the data that's coming in from upstream in the organization isn't quite accurate. So suddenly these people have gone into becoming trainers and coaches for getting others to put accurate data in, whereas before that was their role. We're talking about a massive shift in, if you like, their corporate profile, how they see themselves at work, how they see the value. And what I'm hearing is, I'm not a trainer. You know, why is this my job? They should know how to do things. Why do I have to do it? There's huge pushback because actually we've completely recrafted their role. So when I see those statistics about sort of 2/3 of CEOs think we're actually going to have to upskill and retrain based on generative AI, and that's pretty much what I'm seeing. I think it's a bit higher than is actually what I'm seeing, but the impact of AI is a massive change. It's not just a system change. It's a change to how people see the value that they create in the organizations. So if we thought things were bad, am I depressing you? If I thought things were bad, you know, it's going to get worse. I mean, it does mean that none of us will ever be underemployed. Looking on the bright side, I always try to look on the bright side. But that's the sort of thing that I think we ought to be thinking about. Then, in terms of, I think we have a resource crisis because Professor Cotter, in his latest work, is talking about building that volunteer army. We've already known about it. We've always known about it because what we're talking about here is we could call it the Change Champion Network, the Change Agent Network. We're talking about actually empowering people to lead change within their organisation. We've always had that. But we're now talking about that volunteer army because the volume of change means that we're going to the same old experienced people to get them involved in the change and to translate it back to others. That isn't going to hold true anymore. We need far more than we've ever needed before. So we need to take that capability building even more seriously than we did before. And, you know, senior leaders aren't involved or seen as accountable for building those change management skills. And for those organisations answering this survey, they're saying about half of them are building change management skills in their people, but it's only about half. I think Lenny's just put his hand up. So Lenny, over to you.
Yeah, there's something I have seen many times is very often people, they don't invest so much in trainings and to increase their capabilities. And very often people, they do an APMG change management or ProSci, and they stop there. And the thing I very much like about what you have done, I wanted the last 10 years, maybe more. I think the first time I saw you was 15 years ago. And
thank you. I
the
now
thing
feel
is,
old, but carry on.
Your focus, I think all the things you are doing with the sorry, I don't know all the course you provide, but there are things about neuroscience. Neuroscience, I spent some time training myself on neuroscience, thinking with the brain in mind, key. Behavioral change, behavioral design, key. Training design, training strategy, I will call that training transfer to, which is something else. You have not done that yet, I guess, Melanie, but maybe not far. Change agent, all the things about the journey to bring people, raising interest. This people are upskilling. They should not stop at one training. It's a set of training. And for me, APMG change management or ProSci, this is 20% of the training. It's not 80%. It's a very good start. Sorry, I'm not paid for Melanie business, actually, I guess. But but okay, it's just to spend some time, and we are in a profession where obviously we need to market ourselves, and it's continual upskilling.
Yeah, and I think what I'm going to give you now with this strategic argument that I'm about to put in front of us is perhaps some arguments that will help us at a more senior level get the support and the value of what we do. So that, because if what we do isn't valued, then people aren't going to be prepared to invest in the building of skills for others. So I think that's the part of the argument. And as I said, this is the resource gap, because I had to put this up because it's just a fun little visual. But it's I had a number of people with very similar job titles to you with me face to face in December in the capital city. And the joke was, as I went around, and there was public, private and third sector. And as I went around the group, what was interesting is that everybody said, you know, their change function was about 4 people. Four. It sounded like golf. But the volume of change obviously continuing to increase. So the issue is that the business experts who we need to pull into our changes, actually that pool is decreasing because they're being spread so thin. So I think we've got a massive resource gap. And clearly that volunteer army is further away than Professor Cotter is saying we must develop it. It's further away than it's ever been, which is really of concern. So how on earth do we address this? I think that's the key thing. So this is something that I've been pulling together with global heads of change and transformation from around the world. We've been trying it out, and we think that this is so impactful that you will find it useful. It's about establishing this view that instead of talking about with senior leaders that they are sponsoring a change, or instead of talking about, that they are sort of heading up a transformation, let's go wider. Let's now start talking about this thing called the transforming organisation. Now, Dean's just mentioned agility. What I've put in here to indicate what I mean by the transforming organisation is I have picked out 2 boxes of things that absolutely come up on every global CEO survey as what CEOs want their future state organisation to be. Now, you could put anything in those boxes, but the key thing is, so in this case, I've put organisational agility and a culture of innovation. But at the same time, I've got another organisation who would put in there instead about sustainability, because actually they want to transform to being a net zero organisation. And that is the top strategic objective. So it's about what does being that transforming organisation actually really mean to them. But what I'm saying is that we're lifting our argument away from talking about we are doing transformation programs. No, what we are doing is we are building the future state of our organisation. We are enabling our organisation to be an organisation that continually transforms, grows, reinvents, continually improves. Use the language that's relevant for, obviously, for the language that will be resonating with your board members. And to go further in this argument, the transforming organisation, what's the impact of being a transforming organisation? Now, the impact here I've picked as examples would be that it gives you competitive advantage. It enables you to enter new markets, which if you're a private sector organisation might be just what you want. But if I'm talking about some of my healthcare clients, perhaps that impact is going to be much more orientated towards customer satisfaction and staff engagement. But again, pick the bits that you want, and the results might be revenue, positive reputation. They tend to be universal, whether you're in third sector, private sector. Public sector might be more about cost effectiveness rather than increased revenue, but certainly positive reputation seems to be universal. And getting executives to go, actually, what we're all contributing to is building this transforming organization, means that we're talking to them about their own personal performance metrics. So personal gain, that we have to answer the what's in it for me. So their strategic objectives might well be, you know, on, are you increasing competitive advantage? Are you entering new markets? Are you winning more business? Or it might be that, are you hitting efficiency targets? Whatever that personal impact is. And then, of course, there's the strategic success. But what we're doing is we're lifting ourselves away from just talking about change as if we are leading a particular transformational change. Because when you've got multiple simultaneous change, by talking about the success and the management of particular transformations, actually creates silos between those transformations and blows apart the cohesive picture that we said 20 minutes ago was absolutely key to telling a story that really engages staff. So, Dean, I would make the argument that perhaps what we need to look at in terms of that cohesive story, the compelling picture, is talking about everything we're doing is building towards being that organisation that it can keep going forward, whether you call it agile, innovative, growth, sustainable, whatever it is you want it to be. That's what people are dealing with.
Absolutely, and you've got to keep that messaging consistent all the way through.
Yeah, and so that, now I'm old, as Lenny has thoughtfully pointed out. So I remember in the 1990s when, off the back of, in the 1980s, we had Michael Champion and others talking about business process re-engineering. But in the 1990s, we started talking about becoming a learning organisation. Not all of you as old as me, but we were talking about becoming a learning organisation. I think that our moment has come to reframe what we do as we're becoming a transforming organisation. And my God, has this message landed so positively, so well, with senior leaders who know nothing about how to make change work. And I need them to care before I can teach them what change is all about. So this is my starting point, is let's get them caring. And this, absolutely, this slide, and that's why I'm saying to you, happy for you to use these diagrams, but put the words in the boxes that make sense, that resonate with your board members. And if I take this forward, this argument forward, we talk about, for a transforming organisation, actually what we need to put in place is two capabilities. I think Melanie was talking in part about this, but there's a process piece. You do need some kind of framework, toolkit, approach to change management. I was on with an organisation this morning where they were talking about they're following ADCAR. Another organisation is following KPMG's 7-step process based on Cotter, which is a rip-off anyway. But they've got something, right? But the other piece that I'm really interested in, and the bit that we're really not doing, because the process bit, I think we can tick the box, is actually how we're building that capability for change. And first of all, sort of establishing that capability. If you're capable of doing something, then you have the skills, you have that sort of ability to do something. You have maybe the technical procedural know-how about how to do something. But at the same time, you also have the confidence to be able to do it. And therefore, you are willing to do it, and you don't avoid doing it. You actually, and therefore you keep building those skills. I'm thinking about myself at the moment, in that I have some technical know-how and understanding of how to cook, but I have very little confidence, because my husband has unfortunately characterised my contribution, and I'm in a relatively new marriage, of that she's mastered burnt yet frozen. And so my, you know, I and he's not wrong, by the way. He also, there's been a few fires. So I have some of the technical skills because I watch all of these cooks on the television, but I just don't have the confidence to deploy it. So I don't really have a cooking capability. So when it's my night to cook for us, invariably we're at a restaurant. So, you know, I'm taking myself out of the equation completely. So capability is both developing the skills and developing the confidence for that. Why are we interested in process and people? It's because really to be a transforming organization, we need to make sure that we are mastering the achievement and the experience of any aspect of change. Let me explain. So successful change achievement is, yeah, we have delivered the value in the business case. The problem we've got is if we've got senior leaders who see change as they are going to drive people to work in new ways, adopt that system, follow that process above all else, then that imposed change, what will happen is, yes, and this is really landing in the boardrooms, by the way, they're all nodding along going, yes, that's what we need to do. That's what I'm there to do. That's what my sponsorship, I'm going to get people on board with this. And I say to them, but you're not just managing one change, are you? In a transforming organization, you know, a large part of your leadership these days is how do you lead on the next initiative, the next one. So I say to them, be careful. If that's how you see successful change, then I'm worried you're about to shoot yourself massively in the foot. If, however, you understand that successful change is not just the achievement of the business benefits on the business case, but it's also that everybody impacted by that change has a positive experience of that change. And my neuroscience background here would come in and say that we create things like psychological safety, that we give people an opportunity to feel valued and respected, an opportunity to have some autonomy in how they actually make the change happen. If you give people both the achievement and the positive experience, achievement, dopamine, they're feeling good, they've done something worthwhile, but the experience has also been good, then what you are contributing to the overall transforming organization is you're getting an overall feeling of optimism. You're getting that skills and confidence, you're getting that capability, and people are feeling empowered to take part. And all of that contributes to being this transforming organization. Or you could completely ignore that and go, no, I'm going to drive through this change. And if you do that, you don't, therefore, it is all about ultimately that we're going to force through the business wins for that initiative. But hang on, you're a leader in this organization. You're a leader in a transforming organization. What does that mean? It means that there are multiple simultaneous changes. So you drive through one change, but actually what you've done is you have absolutely removed an organizational capability for change. What you have done instead is you've created that feeling of cynicism and distrust. That's what you've fostered because you've driven it through. So you are creating now a stagnant organization. Bureaucracy, very few ideas, because in distrust and in cynicism, people are just going to fold their arms and they're going to remove themselves from the changes. They've had a poor experience, which means they will ignore the next change. That means there will overall be slower change. These are all the things that Stephen R. Covey talks about when he talks about the cost of distrust in an organization, is that you're putting out yet more messages about the next change and people will ignore you in the nicest possible sense or actively argue against you. And that's where their energy will be pointed. Their energy will absolutely be in active resistance. So you will have slower change, you will have less progress, you will have low motivation, which feeds the poor experience. and this is what I'm seeing in terms of a message that lands with senior leadership. When you take this concept, I'm just going to go back for a moment, and I take this wider concept of the transforming organization and say, you know, if that's what you want to be, or that's what you think you are actually are, you've got so much change on the go that actually you want to be an agile, innovative organization, then when it comes to your senior leaders' contribution to change, that contribution has to be through the lens of a successful change is both achieving the business case and everybody having a positive experience of that change, so that we build up this we're contributing all the time to this wider pool of capability for change. Then we can become that transforming organization. If, however, you don't invest in giving people support, coaching, training, a psychologically safe environment, if you don't ask them how they can contribute to change as opposed to imposing the change on them, if you do all of those things badly, then what you will build instead is this stagnant organization. And everything's going to be slower and harder, and you will be so far from being the transforming organization that you want to be. Comments, questions, interpretations of transforming organization. So who have I got first? Dawn, over to you.
So thanks, Melanie. I suppose my questions, this is really useful. A lot of it, you know, I think won't be new news to a lot of us, but how are you finding this is landing with boards? Because I'm literally doing my board paper at the moment, and it's just a struggle with them even using language that they understand. So how are you finding this is actually landing, and is it changing anything?
Yes, I'll give you, I can't name the organisation.
No, sure.
But the head of change took what I've said, and the chief executive of that organisation has said, my God, that's exactly what I've been talking about. That is we want to be a transforming organisation. Let's do more on this. So I'm seeing that from other organisations. Heads of change have suddenly gone, oh my God, you've helped me press the right button. Okay. They're going, yeah, it's the transforming organisation that we want to be. That is exactly it.
And it's using this model to do that. It's using exactly this model.
Exactly this. It's this diagram here. I'm just going back to it.
Yeah.
As I do with all my diagrams. It's this. On the left, they're saying, right, okay, the transforming organisation it encapsulates all of the different, they've got some digital transformations going on, they've got a new operating model going on, they're therefore, you know, they're doing a whole piece on how they restructure their teams, what the roles are, the whole lot, and actually then bringing that together and going, but you know, some of these will come and go, we'll add to them, we'll extend them. In other words, transformation never stops. We are not in that old model. And this is where I'm going to show my age, because when I was global head of project and program management, what we had was I would be commissioning programs that were 2 or 3 years in duration. And then we'd almost get to, and we'd give it a name. We'd probably get mouse mats printed, you know, with the name of the program, and there'll be 2 or 3 years of focus on that, and then we'd hit that plateau and that would be over, and then there'll be the next thing. And that's not how it happens anymore. Basically every organization has that mixture of business as usual, in other words current capability, and future state capability it's trying to build, and different people within the organization have more or less proportion of their day taken up with that. For you guys, 95% of your day is building the future state capability, 5% is on the current capability, but you're working with people, you're trying to inspire people who are 60-80% on current capability and trying to get the future state capability whenever they can. But what brings all that together is saying we are a transforming organisation. Within that transforming organisation, we have current capability that we should celebrate and future state capability that we are building. And as soon as you get that message, Dawn, and go, yeah, that's exactly it, that's what we are, then suddenly you start to see that actually what we have to do is we have to treat our change programs differently. And we have to treat every single one of them as we need to both achieve and give great experience, because that builds that overall capability for change, which means we can do more and we can get to being this piece here.
Yeah, I think one of the other challenges I have, and I know we didn't talk about it at the beginning, I was just sort of, I'm a bit of a reflector generally, is just that desire to spend the money, because actually this does require an element of capability that may not be in the organisation to do some of this top level. And I would certainly say that's in my organisation, and some of this is just about that desire to invest in it. But this is definitely useful, so thank you.
I summarise another argument that I've been that's landing incredibly well, is that with the business owners 1 step removed from the board, 2 step removed from the board, what's landing very, very well with them is, first of all, the reason that they don't want to invest in change management is they don't really understand it. So I'm just going to double back to some of the challenges you all identified at the start. So they don't really understand it. So why would they want to sort of build this kind of capability? Well, let's start helping them understand it with very simple analogies. And too often they're seeing change through the lens of that more tangible deliverables, i.e. the projects and programs are building them, the new systems, new platforms, we're having organizational design consultants coming in and giving us the new operating models. So the tangible change is there. So we're building the plane. We all know that they also have to build the runway. So one of the things that I think is making a massive difference is being able to talk to people at that level and say, do you know what the runway is? Did a lot of this yesterday morning, so forgive me, but I'll take this piece of paper and my phone. So my phone is the tangible change, new operating model, let's say. We need the runway to be built. And actually giving a very simple recipe to business owners about what that runway is. And that runway is, if you haven't trained people in the new, explain what the new operating model is, then the runway is only that, and they shoot off it. It's too short. The next bit that you build is, have we got the new processes that mean that we can really exploit that new operating model? Okay, have we built policies and standards that back up those procedures? Have we built new roles and responsibilities that exploit those policy standards and procedures? Have we identified new measures of success for those policies, procedures? So that is going down incredibly well, is actually saying, by the way, as leaders, what we need you to do is sponsor both the plane and the runway. And they get that, but then we give them a simple recipe for what that runway actually is.
Love that analogy as well. Yeah, no, I love that analogy, so thank you.
I will say this, one further step up, as somebody said to me this morning, she said, yes, that exactly, we're going to do that. She said, I just need to make sure that we also add in there, if you wouldn't mind, Melanie, when you're doing the masterclasses with them, can you make sure that they all know that they are getting a plane? Because some of them think they're getting a boat, and therefore they'll think they'll need to build a jetty, which I thought was a level of complexity that just made me want another cup of tea. But I'm just passing on, that person would be in your peer group too, so same role. Myra, what about you?
Yeah, I wanted to ask another question on back, which is, when you have these conversations, is there a kind of recognition about the C-suite building their capability? Because I can see them getting it to saying, oh, we're going to have a change team, got to build networks, got to build it within the organisation. But some of the challenges that I've seen is the right questions being asked by the sponsors, by the CFO. And I just wondered whether there's any kind of like aha moment around, upping the game in the boardroom with their skill set to be able to set these sort of transformations and be part of them and leading them.
When I make these arguments, I'm often in the boardroom making these arguments. And what happens afterwards is personal follow-up with me, which is that which is a one-to-one reflection on, I don't have these skills. and therefore not often within the group. Sometimes you will get a board that works very well together and it's honest enough with each other to say, I don't think we really know much about this. And I will have people point at me going, what you've just said about the runway makes perfect sense. At my level, I'm not building the runway, but could you help us with the questions to ask to make sure that people are building the runway within our teams, within our departments? And I think as soon as you've run the argument about you need the runway and the plane, then it opens the door to go, okay, what are the questions? What should we know that we're putting in place? In every organisation, those elements are different, but it ties back to, and sometimes it's about, we need time to allow lots of people an opportunity to workshop what the new procedures should be. We need a chance for people to practice those new procedures. We need, therefore, some psychological safety around being able to say, my working day, I can't be held to these sales targets or these call times if you also want me to be practicing that. So I said some of those things you need to be thinking about, and they all lead back to this really positive experience of change. So it's tying all those messages together. But I would generally say that the plane and runway piece and taking it further and saying, what does a good runway look like? And then recognizing that, okay, so there's a whole load of questions that I can give them that say, these are the sorts of questions you ought to be asking to double check that the runway is being built and that people are testing the runway. And that is where you'll actually get change happening.
And do you find that sometimes, and maybe again it goes into individual conversations, but what I see is sometimes the turf wars between people having their own change happening, and therefore, you know, they're the different runways. So that's where you have the competing piece around the table, where one program is trying to trump another, and then there's all sorts of interesting conversations being had or not being had.
Yes, I mean, and you are describing a dysfunctional board. And you might very well find from that dysfunctional board that therefore I will get people coming up to me personally saying how am I going to help them build their runway, and it's very clear from the different conversations that therefore we're going to have an airport where we've got planes crashing into each other if we're not careful. So circling back and making sure that isn't happening. But I think you can always take people back to that universal. As a transforming organisation, what we have to do is every time we have a new idea, we do recognise, don't we, that we have to have effectively almost every change we commission is a new operating model, which is new processes, procedures, policies, standards, measures, roles, core skills, and every element of how an organisation works is being changed. Have you got a sort of almost like a routine for doing that? And if not, can we build it, please? Is this helpful? A lot of messages resonating with some of you there. So that's why I wanted to spend my Friday lunchtime doing, basically. You're my peer group. I enjoy talking to you. And I just thought it would be helpful if I put those messages out. I know some of you have got to leave now for your next meeting. So I'll stop the recording. But if you would like to stay on and chat to me, or you want to get hold of me, just do so. I would love to carry on the conversation.